Welcome to
dragons,
unicorns,
and other creative creatures.
That's Rona.
That's Dr. Kevin.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, good. So, have you heard about the exciting news in Nashua?
No. There's exciting news in Nashua?
The Nashua Board of Aldermen have approved a $15.5 million contract to redo Alex Shoes that's on Main Street into a center of performing arts. Yay, Nashua!
Yay, Nashua. Good job, Nashua. I know where that is. That was a very big shoe store. It was very unusual to have a non-chain shoe store.
Yep. Well, and Alec is over by the Courtyard Marriott, our exit A.
Right.
Where the Web of Light Expo is happening on April 22nd, 23rd.
Mark your calendars.
Mark your calendar, Earth Day weekend, Web of Light Expo. But there's a big, huge Alex Shoes there where they have a whole building.
Oh.
And when I first moved into the Nashua area, all I wanted to hear was about Alex Shoe, Alex Shoe, Alex Shoe.
Right.
And you need to go to Alex Shoe. And I had gone to a couple of the other places looking for a particular sandal, Chacos, that I really love. I mean, these things I've hiked in the Alps on, and I've hiked across, rivers in Costa Rica.
So you know.
They hold up.
You know.
Couldn't find them. And Jeff was like, we got to go to Alex Shoe. And I'm thinking, a local shoe, if I can't find them here and here and here, I go there. There they are. So anyways, so I Center for the Performing Arts.
That's exciting.
Yes, right on Main Street in Nashua. That's really going to boost.
And there's parking, not just on street parking, but there's already parking garages in that neighborhood. And it's near the public library. And
where the Peacock Players
where
are.
the Peacock Players are up the street there. And that is so great for Nashua. And there's lots of wonderful restaurants there.
Yes, that's really going to bring, there's a lot of retail benefit to an arts center.
Yeah, because people come early or stay after to eat, to shop, to wander, to,
And from May until October, you're going to watch the little outdoor cafes, as long as the weather's permitting, are going to
oh my God, this is going to be wonderful. Do they have a timeline yet? When they start, when they...
They just announced it, I believe it was February 18th. They announced it. Immediately, I had a few different people reach out to me and go, did you see, did you see, did you see? And as we know, I was out of country, so I didn't see. But,
I didn't see that.
But anyways, so, but I wanted to share that. And so there's some exciting times.
That's terrific.
Maybe we can reach out to some of the people involved in that project or whatever. And
throughout the process even. As it gets closer, as they make decisions, things like that.
It'll be interesting to see. I suspect it will have an artistic director.
Yeah.
Somebody that's going
and lobby space is also great.
Gallery
space, yes, potentially.
But they should definitely have local artists there displaying their wares.
I know, for example, the Merrimack Repertory Theater has a great relationship with Western Avenue Studios, and for every show they do a juried art exhibit, so they let us know what the play is, what its themes are, both its main themes and its underlying themes, and then the artists can submit to be there during the show's run.
And that's really great, and I'm hoping that they will be doing something like that.
I hope so too.
And and we say Nashua, we shoot out of Hudson, but really Hudson, Nashua. I mean, this is all this is the whole Amherst, Milford. This whole area will benefit from this, or can benefit from it if it chooses.
Absolutely.
And then you have Positive Street Art.
That's right.
Who I have to say, I have in person met people that were like executives or on the committees or founding members. I met them at AIDS Walks. I've met them here. I have had to order a new set of cards for the number of cards I've given out to them with promises they'll get back, because we would love to do a show on Positive Street Arts. And their excuse is, well, they're a bunch of artists and they're trying to get their act together. As why, when I run into somebody and I go, well, I talked to this person, I talked to that person, I've sent emails, they said they could back. I don't know.
Artists shouldn't be. You know what? I get it. There is a shyness, there is a vulnerability about creating art. It's sometimes hard enough to be able to be willing to sell it and value it and put it out there. But guys, come on, we want people to hear about you. Don't you want people to hear about you?
So, speaking about people to hear about.
Yes.
We have LIsa Hertel.
We do.
And she is one of 300 artists at Western Avenue Studios in Lowell. Well, I've heard of Western Avenue
Have
before.
you heard of it before?
I think I've heard of Western Avenue.
Once, twice.
Once or twice.
A dozen times.
The largest artist colony on the East Coast. Now, I didn't know that. You've never said that to me before.
I think I know it, but no, it didn't come up in conversation. But yes, there's a lot of us there.
Now, is this based on waistline? Or?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Well, she mainly...
Got that.
Well, she mainly sells her pottery. She also does watercolors and encaustics.
Yes, wait until you hear about those.
Okay. Are they related to sarcastics?
No.
Because I know about sarcastics.
Yeah, but you can't sell sarcastics. Trust me, we've tried.
Alcohol inks. And
This is going to be fun, isn't it?
wire sculpture. Hey, you know, I had some time off. I'm all wound up now. She is always learning new art techniques and loves to apply lessons learned in one media to another, or mixed media.
Hey, create something new.
Like a mixtape?
Sort of.
Sort of. Okay. Maybe a mixed duct tape. You know, you have all those colors of duct tapes now. You can create art with duct tape.
You can. I've seen it done.
Yes. A former pharmacist.
I know. She likes
So
mixing
she-
her chemicals.
So she's one of those people that came from the dark side into the light.
Into the light.
In her spare time, she helps run science fiction conventions. Well, I'm going to poke at her there because I'm going to re-release my science fiction book.
Very exciting.
I'll have to figure out about that. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you know, we will send you a sympathy card after the show for your experience.
I love that you work in so many mediums. It's something that I don't think I realized before we started doing this show, how many artists and creatives really love to just find yet another way to explore their creativity. How did you end up getting into so many different things?
Mostly by being at Western Avenue Studios.
That'll do it.
Because I would watch somebody say, "Ooh, that looks fun. That looks cool." So I don't have a formal art training. I didn't really have much time for art when I was in college. But at Western Avenue, it's a community, and the rule is if your door is open, people can wander in. And so, like for the encaustics is painting with wax. Obviously, you didn't know that. And it's
Today's
actually
word of the day is
Encaustics.
encaustics. And actually, it's an ancient Greek word meaning to burn in. And some of the things that we have from ancient Egypt and ancient Greece that still have color are encaustics because the pigment is embedded in the beeswax.
so it wouldn't have faded the same way other things
Right, because it wasn't
did.
the pigment wasn't exposed to air, so it didn't fade.
Well, that's interesting.
So it's a fairly permanent sort of media.
Ask any woman who's tried to get crayon out of a kid's clothes or the
Right.
rug. She'll tell you it's a pretty permanent.
It's pretty permanent. But like my neighbor down the hall was an expert in encaustics, and I used to just wander in her studio and chat with her while she was doing her thing, and I would be like, "That looks cool. You're making art with fire."
Little pyro going on here.
Which the alcohol inks also is, that's one of the newest mediums. So alcohol inks are a dye that is alcohol soluble. You can buy them in like Michael's, and you can use just rubbing, the 91% rubbing alcohol from CVS. I actually upgraded to denatured alcohol from the hardware store because it's cheaper. But you can set them on fire. I've only set my studio on fire twice.
Only that's in 5 years. That's actually
That's
pretty good.
But the dyes will retain their color when briefly exposed to heat. I mean, if you set them on fire a little too often, they kind of get a little brownish.
They get a little burnt.
Tad.
Don't we all when exposed to too much heat?
But
Some flames are eternal. Go ahead.
so yeah, we're not supposed to actually have any candles, but I set my things on fire quite regularly.
Okay, so explain this to me a little. You've really caught my interest because
You're a pyromaniac?
I'm a flame. No,
Oh, I should have seen that coming.
So when you say you put it in wax, so what are you actually putting into the wax or into the alcohol? I mean, I know all about putting alcohol into me,
So
And
encaustics
I've lit
are
a
these.
few desserty things on fire. There's those desserts with.
Flambés?
Yes, that's it. But this
Aren't
is
those what they call gays in Key West?
so
sorry.
possibly.
So encaustics is basically these little tiny blocks. They look a little bit like the little hotel soaps that are really intense pigment. Or you can use crayons, which I do when I'm doing it. So when I go to conventions, a lot of times I'll do demos and I'll do things with kids. And then I use the crayons because obviously broken crayons are a lot cheaper than little $25 blocks of encaustics.
High pigmented, yeah.
Heavily pigmented. They're also a lot safer. Some of the encaustic pigments aren't too healthy, like many pigments in art. So what you do is you have beeswax, which is mixed with tree resin called damar resin, which I'm not sure what it does, but it supposedly makes it better. And you can throw these pigments in, and you can literally paint with them. Once you use your palette is a pancake griddle
Oh my God, that's so
that
cool.
you never ever want to use again for food.
Right.
And
No longer food safe.
right, and once the wax hardens fairly quickly on the brush, and obviously once you've used that brush for encaustics, you can really never use it for anything else again. It's dedicated to encaustics because your bristles get full of wax, and unless they're heated up, they're hard.
And so cleaning them, you run the risk of just destroying it instead
Right,
of
you
cleaning it.
can't get the wax out.
Yeah.
So I have certain brushes that are just dedicated to encaustics.
Now, was one of these things that you brought on the
Yes.
table, that
Yep.
was done as an encaustic?
Right, so that's actually made with crayon.
Ooh, hand it over.
And that's a craft this is one of the crafts I do with kids. What we do is I have them select some crayons, usually 3 is about right. I have them drop it on a pancake griddle. And then we put a piece of paper, that's just ordinary copy paper,
Oh.
on top once the crayons have all melted, which is usually an exercise in patience depending upon the age of the child.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of art is watching paint dry. But in caustics, you watch the paint melt, so
That's a really good
kind of
point.
the
It's so
opposite.
true.
And so they drop the piece of paper on, and usually this is multiple passes, but usually it's just like I just do, give them a sheet of paper, and then you just buff it up, and it's done. So it's kind of instant art, and it's a lot of fun to do, and the kids really love it, and they'll come back and do more and more and more.
Like I was saying, the result is so beautiful. They
It is
must get a
beautiful.
real kick out of the fact that a technique they just learned can look so good.
Right.
That doesn't work when you're drawing, still lifes or any of those things. That when you start off, it looks awkward as heck. So, to have something look so pretty right off the bat, and I love the way you turn that one into a card.
Right. Yeah, so, and this is one of those photo cards I bought online.
Cool.
And you just slide the paper in and out. And it's a lot of fun, though, to do it. And as you said, the result is pretty instantaneous. This past weekend at Boscone, I was teaching how to, so anything you can do with encaustics is you can take something that's laser printed, because the laser ink is plastic, and you can embed it into the encaustic, so you have a little image embedded into your encaustic.
Okay, that I got to see in person because it's hard to picture.
It is
Yeah.
hard to
Amazing.
picture. It's you sort of rub it to death so that the ink gets embedded, and then you take water and basically rub off the paper. You make a lot of little spitballs. And
the kids must love that. Oh, heck, the adults would love that too.
it's a little slower, but it's actually a lot of fun. And then you can have like a little rocket ship or whatever on your in your nebula, basically.
Very
So
cool.
it's very cool.
You know what I would love to do is, especially because you deal in so many different arts, is have a version of have you come back, Lisa. Only I want to bring a camera and have you like show our
Ooh,
audience.
that would be fun.
Do another show at some point and actually bring the camera to your studio and have you, because so much of what you're doing is so visual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I think people.
Would really get a kick out of seeing it in process.
Yeah. So obviously we're far from being done now, but we're gonna get over
mind is already
and
thinking.
set up a time to actually show some of this stuff.
That'd be fun. My studio is pretty small.
That's all right. We'll squeeze in and be snuggly.
It's an intimate show.
It will be.
Yes.
Up close and personal.
We'll figure it out.
We will.
Yeah.
We always
Anyway,
do.
so continue. So now,
That's the alcohol ink.
So that's alcohol ink. That's just, so the alcohol ink is actually, the ink itself is fairly transparent. That's a tile from Home Depot. I go to Home Depot a lot. A lot of artists do. You graduate out of the expensive art stores and go to the cheaper Home Depot stores.
That's when you know you're rather serious.
And again, that's something where I put the ink on the tile, I flood it with alcohol, and then I light it on fire. And then I've sprayed it with an acrylic just so that it doesn't rub off the smooth tile. Alcohol ink can be done on any smooth surface. There's a expensive plastic paper called Yupo that you can do it on, which gives some really nice results. I found it also works on finger painting paper. It doesn't give as nice results, but it's a lot cheaper. Especially,
Necessity, being the mother of invention and all that.
and a lot of times when I do alcohol inks on paper, what I'll do is I'll cut the paper into strips, and then I'll hand weave it together in a mat. Do you remember when you were a kid?
We
you
have
had
one of those
looms?
pictures.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if we can pull up the picture of the one that's the woven picture. It's greens, I think, and that
Yes,
one.
that.
Okay.
Let's
So-
show our yes, there we
That
go.
is, I believe that is actually finger painting paper.
Okay.
And with the alcohol inks on it.
That's just so springy and
Yeah.
you know, buds blooming and things happening, and I love it.
Now, do you do anything to keep the weave in place, or does it just keep itself in place?
Mostly it keeps itself in place. I sometimes use a little bit of Elmer's on the corners just to keep it in place. This is a fairly large one. Right now what I'm doing is I'm making smaller ones and I'm putting them on little white tiles, also from Home Depot. I feel like I'm advertising. But and I put in a plastic epoxy over that to seal it on, so that it's sealed and it's sort of archival. The epoxy is good to about 120. So it makes a nice coaster. You can't use it as like a trivet, but it's fine as a coaster.
And again, it preserves the art.
And
I
it
think
preserves
lets
the art and
become
it's way
usable.
cool. And I can do that with, also cut the encaustic paper into strips and do that as well. Weave that together.
Well, historically, artists have always had to figure out how to do stuff on the cheap, because a lot of times all the money that's made on art is after you're dead.
And it's so hard to spend it then.
You know, no, but you know, how many? I mean, like canvas used to be so expensive. If they didn't like a picture, they'd just
Redid it,
They just
yeah.
redid it.
Paint over it, yeah.
They'd find stuff over this, and so for up and budding artists who are watching the show, and they go to a high-end paint store and they go, okay, I've got $50 that I've saved
have
to
one
put on
color.
art to do this. Anything, I mean. Besides going to places like Home Depot to get tile, you can go to Goodwill or Savers or stores like that you have to be creative unless
create?
you're one of those few lucky, I have a limitless budget artists. And
I
there
don't
are,
know any of them.
yeah, well, there are a few out there, but
There
they're
are.
few and far between.
I have a patron, I call him my husband.
God bless the spouses.
Yes, it's a good thing. I certainly don't make enough off my art to pay my rent at Western Ave, which is why I have a really small studio. But I do actually, I do sell here and there out of the studio, at conventions. Mostly I sell at farmers markets. In the summer, I mostly sell pottery. That's my bread and butter. But unless you're really clumsy, there's only a limited need for how many mugs you want.
I don't know, I have an awful lot of mugs. I should probably have a few less.
Yeah.
But
and
at
me
Western
both.
Ave, we have something we call free cycle, where I've been able to pick up things like I'll pick up a small canvas to do encaustics on that was somebody's failed acrylic painting, or I'll pick up frames or whatever.
You get creative.
get creative.
And Free Cycle and Craigslist can be a great place to look. Actually, we've had recycled art. People who use recycled. We've had Bruce Wood, who.
Oh yeah, his stuff is great. I've given Bruce some things. My husband has a CPAP and he used the mask for.
Oh, I can imagine that mask would be good
His
on Bruce's work.
Rocketeer.
Yeah.
So.
And so yeah, you get creative with the material out there so that you can continue to create. You
Right.
can't keep a good creative down.
Yeah, and you
shouldn't.
continue to play.
You do.
And we've got another recycle artist that we're going to be having on an upcoming show
That's
that
right.
I discovered, or not discovered, but I got introduced to when I was in Carousel, who does it with bumpers from cars and tires and all sorts of stuff.
Anything, you know, it's amazing that you can, where and how you can create beauty, and you know, you said in your bio, and you've obviously shown that this is, you're still learning, you're still like absorbing and trying, and
Yeah, 2 weeks ago I took a class in paper marbling from one of the other artists at Western Avenue. And now I'm trying to figure out how to do that in my studio.
you're gonna marble with the with the wax even. That could be interesting. Just start combining the.
Yeah. So on the alcohol thing, so yeah, I want to try to understand more of the process, because
Okay,
that's
that's what
me,
he wants to
because
understand.
I'm like you. I mean, I have art supplies and all sorts of stuff.
Ooh, shiny.
Yeah, you know, and I'm always trying to play or do something different. And so with the alcohol, you have a special paint that you put in, or
No,
explain
no.
that to
So
me.
the alcohol, so it's these little like bottles. They look like eyedropper bottles that have this really intense dye that is alcohol soluble. You don't have to light it on fire. Obviously, I'm using finger painting paper. I found lighting that on fire was a bad choice.
And there's only one way to find out.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
But the dyes are really intense and they're transparent. So some of the things I do with alcohol ink is like, I'll take a glass frame and I'll do the alcohol ink on the glass, and then I'll take another piece of glass that's the same size and do an alcohol ink on that, put them back to back so the art is on the inside, and hang that in a window. It's really beautiful. Because you get these really intense colors, you can get the light shining through them.
That's a nice combination of that intensity with
And
transparency.
There are some people who actually can make, so one of the reasons I started doing encaustics and alcohol inks is because, as you can tell from my watercolors, I can be very finely detailed. Many artists are kind of anal retentive.
No.
And a little ADD. And we get into these really,
right up my alley.
we get into these really finely detailed things and, you know, agonizing over every line and stroke. And with the alcohol inks, the first time I did encaustics, I was trying to actually paint with them, and I realized that no, these have flow, and that they really lend themselves to more abstract. And so these abstract things are what I do. They're fast, unlike pottery that has a 2-week turnaround time. I can, you know, churn out 3 to 5 encaustics or alcohol inks in a day that actually are done and finished, and I'm done, and that's it.
So when you need that, you occasionally, as an artist, you need that feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
That feeling of finishing. You know, as a writer, it takes a long time before you get to that point. You can feel that way about a scene, and even then, you could want to edit it. So I understand that sort of. There's a need occasionally just to find something that's just.
Yeah, this is why writers write short stories.
On occasion, yes, it's a
Yes.
good break from
Or-
the longer work. Well, here's let's see if we can show our
Yeah,
viewers.
So, yeah,
this
that's
one.
a watercolor.
And that
So-
one definitely has a lot of detail. I can see it not just in the colors, but in, I mean, just the wood behind, you know,
Right.
our chicken here, and the
So-
detail in his legs, and oh my gosh.
So that painting started out with, I'm doing a book, a series
Yay.
I have 14 stories from all around the world. And this one is obviously the Little Red Hen.
And there she is.
So what I did was, a friend of my daughter's has chickens, so I went over to her house and took about 20 pictures of chickens. She thought I was a little crazy.
No, you are, but that's, you know, us, so keep going.
So this is one of her chickens. Her chicken was not quite this color, so I went and looked up the coloring for Rhode Island Red.
Beautiful.
And so what I do is I draw it in pencil, and then I go over it with ink. I use rapidographs, which are these nice technical pens. And then I basically, once the inking is done, I erase the pencil, and then it's just sort of like color by numbers, except there were no numbers, and it's a lot more coloring. But it's,
I love what came after the except.
it's there's a
Just like it.
it's the watercolors over that, and that's the result, the Little Red Hen.
I love it. I love how I can tell that the head is just slightly turned. It's not direct profile. She's sorry, is just a little bit turned away from me like that with her wheat in her mouth.
And then, meanwhile, while I'm doing this, I'm also researching the stories and I rewrite the stories. This one is a fairly modern story. This is actually, Little Red Hen is actually a tale from ancient Russia, from about the 1800s. And it became popular in the United States around the 1900s as a work ethic sort of story.
Oh, okay. Vaguely familiar
Because
with it.
the hen goes to all the lazy animals,
Right.
and the lazy animals don't help her, so then she's, very capitalistic. At the end, she eats the bread all herself, right? It's sort of very much an anti-socialism message.
Poor hen. Bad capitalism.
So that's why it became very popular in this country,
Yeah,
right as communism was on the rise.
There you go. And red no less, too.
Right.
She has to be a red hen on top of that.
Right, and it's funny that it's a Russian story about anti-communism. Although when I talk about it in the book, so at the end I have endnotes and I talk about some. I don't get into all the detail, but I talk about some of the origins of the stories. For example, I have one of Puss in Boots, classic story, and the boots I put on the cat was actually. So the original story, it got rewritten by Charles Perrault, who's a French.
Cinderella's his best known.
Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast and stuff. But originally it was an Italian story.
That makes sense. They make better shoes.
And so the boots I put on Puss were from the MFA archives. I found them online.
Ooh.
And they are 15th century Italian boots, which is when the story was written. So the cat was mine, one of my previous
Now,
cats.
do we have a
picture of. No, I don't think I sent you that one. I only.
No.
Pictures do we have, by the way? Can we?
We have a
just see-
bunch.
So, okay, this was actually for a drawing class that I did many years ago. This is in charcoal pencil. My husband does karate. He's a second-degree black belt, and he has his karate camp every year near Gettysburg. And this particular year, I went with my small children, and I was hanging out by the pool and drawing what was hanging out beyond the fence, beyond the pool.
And that's why it was there.
And again, this was sort of just exercise. I do a lot of pencil work, but nobody really sees it because then I do things usually afterwards.
And on top of it, right? You
On
would
top
say
of
with
it.
the color.
Well, I want to go back because I wanted to just see what else we had for pictures so that we can kind of see what the upcoming pictures are. But I do want to go back that I love this concept for people like me who want to know the story behind the story. Mm-hmm. There's always that, and this is going to sound, trust me, it actually will make sense at some point, or maybe not. But it's like, sometimes I'll watch the YouTube videos of, because I won't watch TV per se, but like I love watching like The Voice or America's Got Talent or some of the best ones.
Yeah.
And I hate it when I get the videos that they don't let the judges give the feedback at the end. You just see the performance, and I'm like, no, I want to hear what they had to say about it as well.
Yeah.
And all I could do was think about. To be able to read of, Puss in Boots started here, and then it was taken by this one, it was taken there, or this one started, the red hen came from the red communist before they were the red communist, and then became the Star Spangled Banner. I mean, the story behind the story is fascinating. So you're doing Puss in Boots and the red hen. What other stories are you doing? I didn't mean to skip the rest of that story.
No, that's fine. I'm doing a story from China about a cricket. Because cricket fighting was a big thing in China.
Cricket fighting.
Cricket fighting. It's
Like
still
dog
a big,
fighting. They let the two crickets go at
right.
each other.
It's still actually a big thing in China, and it is a very quintessentially
big can it
Chinese
be?
story.
Crickets are small.
They aren't. They're small, and they fight in an arena that's about the size of a petri dish.
And all the spectators get little binoculars.
But it's still a big thing in China.
Is it?
The story from Australia was the Aboriginal story about a boy who turns into koala, who's actually kind of an abused boy, and gets his revenge on the tribe by hoarding all their water because they wouldn't let him have enough to drink.
Like that.
And the story from South America is called The Hummingbird's Wedding. I forget whether it's Incan or Mayan. I think it's Mayan, about how the hummingbird acquires its beautiful colors. The story, there's a couple of Aesop's tales that most people are familiar with, the grasshopper and the ant, the tortoise and the hare. The Little Red Hen, most people are familiar with. I'm trying to remember them all. There's 14.
That's
I
okay.
love
We
that
don't
they're
know
from
all of them,
so
but
many
just-
different
I tried
countries too,
to-
because there are
yeah.
the familiar, but more importantly, they're the unfamiliar. And as somebody who loves fairy tales and loves seeing them retold, this is great that they're coming from different heritages.
Right.
because-
I started out with Aesop, and I was like, okay, these are just, everybody knows these. And I tried to expand. I have one of the Anansi stories from Africa. I have a fairly modern story about a boy who leaves his tribe and goes to live with a wolf that's Native American. It was sort of a generic Native American, and so I think it's a fairly modern story because it wouldn't tell me what tribe it was from. But I actually put a lot of research into finding the stories. I'm kind
It's
of
wonderful because it
sad-
really reminds us a lot about cultures themselves. It's amazing how much cultural information you can get out of a fairy tale.
Right. Like I couldn't find a good story from India because, well, they have stories with animals in them. They don't have anywhere it's really centered around the animal. Somebody suggested Rikki Tikki Tavi, but I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not Kipling.
And one of the things I discovered, I actually had done, my first panel at Aresia was on fairy tales. And what I had discovered doing the research was that the sooner they were, most fairy tales are done, retold, they were just retold, they were passed down orally, and so they weren't written down. So the earlier the people were colonized, and basically earlier England showed up, the fewer stories were ever written down, and we have less records of these tales, which is
Right.
too bad. They're lost. There are a lot
Yeah.
that are lost.
Don't forget Spain, France, the
Yeah, they didn't help.
Netherlands. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
know.
I don't want you to just make it the poor
I know.
English.
I didn't want to. It's not just England. No, it's true.
Go ahead.
And but like some of them I combined, like for the Anansi story, the spider I used was a banana spider that I took a photo of in Jamaica. They were like, that spider was as big as my thumb. It was scary. I don't like spiders.
I have a picture of a cricket that I took, no, it's a grasshopper, I think, that I took when we were, this is years ago, when my partner and I of the time were in Costa Rica, and we were backpacking through Costa Rica.
And
and
it was-
no, I mean Honduras, Guatemala.
Big as the hand.
Winter's a good thing.
That has nothing to fear but fear itself, and spiders, apparently giant grasshoppers.
But the coloring I used for the spider was not the coloring of a banana spider. I used the patterning, but I used the coloring from the Ghana flag, because the original stories were from Ghana, and then they were brought to Jamaica, which is why I use this picture of a spider that's native to Jamaica.
But now you've blended them
And so
together.
I blended them together.
I like that.
So we're going to bring up another piece of art, which is completely different than everything we've talked about.
Which is awesome.
So if we can bring that picture up, and then tell us what this is.
So these are little trees made out of telephone wire. One of the
Okay.
conventions I worked for is a convention called Aresia, which is in Boston in January. And they used to do something called Junkyard Wars, which was a popular TV show in the 90s. And one of our attendees was a chronic person on Junkyard Wars. And he had given us a bin full of junk. And one of the major components was a huge bin full of telephone wire.
Oh.
And eventually we didn't do Junkyard Wars anymore. We were cleaning out, and they were going to throw out this huge bin of telephone wire. And I was like, you can't throw that out. That's telephone wire.
I can make something with it.
And they looked at me like I was crazy.
Because that
And your
was the
point?
first time, and that was the first time that happened ever.
Right?
Yeah, not.
And so in my building at Western Avenue, there's a guy named Scott who does beautiful wire trees, totally wired. He makes them out of nice wire.
Oh, I don't know.
expensive
These
wire.
are colorful.
But mine are a lot more colorful. His are silver and copper, and he uses good, heavy quality wire. But I was looking for a craft I could do with kids at conventions, and I was thinking about his trees, and I was wondering, I wonder if I could make those. And just having seen them, not having watched him do anything. And so I had an hour to kill, so I figured out how to make them. And now it's a craft I can usually do. So usually panels are about an hour long. I can teach you how to make these in about half an hour, and then you can do another one in the rest of the panel time. And I can teach this to usually around 8 and up. Kids under 8 sometimes have a problem with the concepts. But it's just basically twisting telephone wire together. And then I mounted these on a rock. Crazy glue I found works.
There you go.
But I don't bring crazy glue to conventions.
Or to 8-year-olds.
Or to 8-year-olds.
She just brings the crazy. She lives the glow
You know,
home.
leave the glue home.
And,
the kids can handle the crazy.
I tell the kids, you can, you know, after the end, I was like, you have to arrange the branches and make it into art, and you can clip the branches that are too long once. It's not like bonsai; it will never grow back.
This is true.
And so I make these little trees, and they're a fun craft.
I love how these kids are getting introduced to everyday objects, everyday leftovers, everyday things that they have, and realizing that they can be creative.
Actually, with 8-year-olds, I have to explain what telephone wire is.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Because nowadays it's all fiber optics.
It's all fiber optics. You can't twist fiber optics
Well,
like
you
that.
I've met some twisted fiber optics. It depends on what's going through it.
You can make other things with fiber optics, but not
That's
these.
true.
So I keep on hearing this regular theme of kids, kids, kids. You do a lot of kids teaching.
Yes, I like the one I say about kids is that they have the most open minds. You know, for them everything is a game. I mean, most adults will look at telephone wire and think, oh, there's money in that copper. You know,
Or we just need to get rid of this, as
or we
they
just
almost
need to
did.
get rid of it. But I can teach them how to do things like make trees out of it. When I was a kid in my day camp, we used to make rings out of telephone wire.
Yeah. I can remember doing some things like that, making necklaces or charms for necklaces.
I used to
Yeah.
braid it together to make bracelets.
Yeah.
Right. But I find that kids are really great about art. They don't think, oh, that's terrible, I could do so much better. They don't stress over trying to get it into being something. Like the encaustics, when I do the pancake griddle thing, the grown-ups will try to make patterns in the wax. I'm like, it's not going to work. You know, they'll try to be
Trust me, I've tried to be
specific.
that compulsive.
They've tried to do specific things, and I'm like, go ahead and try, but it's not going to work. Whereas the kids are just like, yeah, let's drop crayons on a griddle.
Let's let it be what it becomes.
and then they love the result. So the kids are a lot, in some respects, a lot easier to work with, and sometimes I get ideas from them too. They'll do things and I'll be like, okay, that's cool, and they'll show me things.
It's got to be nice to be around that energy, that sort of not trying to control it, and the incredible excitement and, you know, eyes wide open at the result.
Yeah,
Look
the
what I
golden age
did.
of art, they say the golden age of science fiction is 12, the golden age of art is around 8. Because you have the manual dexterity to do most of it, but you're not hypercritical. You don't think about what's good art, what's bad art. You just think, oh, this looks cool.
Yeah, you don't start thinking that way until you hit your first art teacher in elementary school that says,
No, draw a yellow flower.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or some other thing.
I can't see you ever saying that to a kid.
No, actually-
you have to draw it like this, and you have to draw it like that.
Oh, now we have some of your pottery.
Yay!
Let's get this up so we can see. I like
Show our
the
viewers.
I think it's a bunny terrine dish, or is it just a bowl?
No, so this is
This is great. Wait,
this is a yarn bowl.
It's a hole there.
So this one is actually a sheep, and where the horns would be on a sheep are 2 cutouts. So you can pull the yarn. You can if you put like one in a plastic bag, you can actually use 2 different yarns at once, or you can just use one side or the other. That will actually fit a fairly large ball of yarn. That's not small, so it'll fit a ball of yarn about this big, which is pretty much a commercial skein.
Yeah.
And people who love to knit love yarn bowls. I learned how to knit once. I never learned how to purl. I learned how to knit. I made a scarf. And
That's great.
And like most knitters, I started out with yarn I really liked. Bought in Milton, New Hampshire, actually, at an alpaca farm. And
That was been gorgeous.
and I started out, and I learned how to knit. I made a scarf. I washed it, which was a mistake, because then I
alpaca.
kind of had a neck wrap. I wore it once and lost it the first day I wore it.
Oh no!
And I was like, okay, I'm done.
That's a whole story. It's the tragedy of
It's
the
a
alpaca
tragedy.
scarf.
But I had friends who knit, who apparently know not to wash things in hot water, and apparently know also like, you know, how to like use big needles or something.
And pearl.
And know how to pearl. And they asked me to make yarn bowls, and so I started making yarn bowls. I remember the first time I saw a yarn bowl, I was like, what good is a bowl with a hole cut in the side? But then it was explained to me. And so I tell people quite honestly, I do not knit, but I will make you yarn bowls. I had a friend who asked me, I make cat yarn bowls.
Which seems appropriate because
Right.
cats in yarn.
Yeah.
Right. And I had a friend who asked me to match her cat, and I gave it to her this past week, and she was thrilled. She recognized her cat right away. And
Beautiful.
That's
So-
great. And so, yeah, so the yarn comes through and just stays straight and doesn't get all tangled up or roll off your lap.
and the cat can't get to it as easily and roll it off the table.
There we go. Keeps it from the cat.
Yeah, well,
And it's beautiful enough that you can leave it on your table.
it's funny because when you guys were talking earlier about, you know, sometimes need to do something quick and not taking a long time, I'm in the process of making a Christmas gift, which is being crocheted, because I knit and crochet. And I do a lot of stuff with colors and yarns and patterns. And I'm thinking, and Jeff's my husband, doesn't always get it when I'm like, I'll be on this big process, and I'll take some other, and I'll have like some little project, and I'll just take the little project and just, okay, now I'm done with that project. Now I can go back to this is going to take months.
It is, and when you change the tactile version of it, I will do things like visual journaling or scrapbooking because it's just a different physical process. It's a different part of the creative brain, and the muse likes it. She feels good after it. She's like, yeah, I'm
But,
creative.
yeah,
I can
that's
do this
great.
stuff." Look, she
I'm
has
gonna
little
have to-
fairy mugs. Look at the tiny one.
Yeah, actually, those are made by my own little pinkies on the wheel.
Oh, let's bring the picture up again. You see the
Pinky mug.
Little pinky
Yeah, they
mug.
are. I almost wore one today because I've made necklaces into some of them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because I have a whole bunch of little tiny fairy pottery. My mother-in-law is a master gardener. Her specialty is daylilies, but she asked me to make her a lot of things for her garden. So I started making little things for gardens, and then I started making little things for fairy gardens.
You know, my first thought was, ooh, little tiny coffee mugs. It's like, you can put like writers, you know, you can perpetually have a mug around your neck since we're always
Yeah.
with the coffee. Those are so sweet.
I'm going to have to stop by, I have to say, I'm going to have to stop by Western Ave and check out the yarn bowls because Jeff wants to get a cat because our
He
cat
can-
died last year.
Oh, so
so
this tide him over? He can pet the bowl?
well, no, but
Oh.
before we get the cat, I need something to keep the yarn
Yarn in
safe
prior
because he's
to.
going to want to get a kitten.
And the kitten's going to go straight after that. Yes, you're right.
Actually, so for a friend who crochets who's at Western Avenue, I guess crocheting, a lot of times it comes on a spindle. So he asked me to make him the equivalent of a yarn bowl, but have a spindle in the middle. And I was like, okay, I could do that.
Oh.
And he was
Also,
very
will
happy
work
with
to
it.
hold bracelets and other things like that. That's
Now,
awesome.
we
This
just
is
had
an encaustic.
That's wax.
That's wax.
that's-
so can we see this?
Yeah, I
'Cause
was
we're
about to
coming
say,
a
viewers,
close.
you've got to see this. That's wax, everybody. You'd
So-
never guess it if we hadn't discussed it further. You can
That's-
kind of see it from the sheen.
That's not crayon. That's the real wax. That's real encaustic. See, the
That's the
colors are very
expensive
intense. That's the expensive stuff. That's about an 8x8 canvas. I think I cut off the edges slightly because of the glare. Usually you don't do encaustic on canvas. You usually do it on a hard surface, but I found the canvas isn't free cycle, and it was small enough that it wouldn't crack. But that's,
Apparently, it works beautifully.
you put it on in layers and you use heat guns and you can carve into it. You can, like I said, you can put things like laser printing on it. You can make graphite paper and draw on it. And that's encaustic. That's actually a pair, one of a pair. The other isn't quite as impressive, but they go at science fiction conventions because they have this very nebula-like feel.
They do.
They do it, yeah. They definitely. I actually am seeing dancing ghosts.
Well, yeah.
I see a
this
little
one's very
ghost
cool.
head at the top, and the ghost is dancing, and there's a rabbit to what's to my left-hand side, watching the ghost dance throughout the.
Oh, I just saw the rabbit. Yes, there he is.
yeah, to see.
All right, now we got story prompts and more fairy
So-
tales and.
I'm too much of a scientist. To me, it's just random stuff.
In these moments, you get literal, and that's okay. You know what? Sometimes the literal applied to the creative is quite impressive.
Yeah.
But then people are like, oh, yeah, I see this and this and this. And I'm like, okay.
That's fine.
She's also going to supply them as Rorschach tests.
No, I see the ghost face.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I could sit there and see.
I know that you could turn it and.
yeah, they don't really have a this way is up yet.
No, you don't. It's,
Yeah.
It's what you want.
Yeah. See, that's one of those pieces of art that I would every now and then switch the way it was
Just turn
hanging.
it, yes.
Just turn it.
Sometimes when I wire them, I actually wire them so you can hang them any direction.
That's smart. Yeah, because then you're not making the decision. The person observing can.
LIsa Hertel, we are coming to the end of our show. We want to thank you so much for coming. LIsa is at Western Avenue. The first Saturday of every month.
Yeah.
There's an open art studio. There's over 300. It's the largest art enclave on the East Coast.
Yeah.
You can come and meet people like LIsa, and there's a girl there named Rachel Kenley that we had on the show
Occasionally,
once,
yes.
along with a few other, Bruce Wood, and the names go on and on.
Kelly Belt and Mary Dumas, and yes, tons and more, and so much more.
And so much more. So we want to thank you very much for coming on, and we will be in touch about seeing if we can come into that tiny little studio and position a camera to have you actually just see your hands and see some of the stuff.
See the process.
See the process. I think it would be fun to do a couple of process shows.
That could be.
Sure, that'd be great.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Junk is only junk if you see junk. If you look at junk and you see art, we have yet met another artist, and we'll meet another one coming up in one of our future shows about how to recycle almost anything and everything into art. Art lives everywhere and starts in you and the way you choose to see it. Namaste.